Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Lori Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Melissa and Jen on the Enneagram and clutter. If you haven't already listened to last week, make sure you hit the pause button, go back and listen to part 1 of my conversation with the ladies of Pro Organizer Studio as we talk about how each one of them approaches dealing with clutter and organization based on their Enneagram type.
Oh, Laurie, you're going to be
all right.
Well,
we're going to have
God's
to
work.
Yeah, you're going to have to be my co-pilot on that because my plate's full right now.
I would love to.
Okay.
Oh, well, I know. We'll find time.
So let's talk about the 3 different types of clutter that I talk about. So I break clutter into 3 main camps, and then you have your subcategories from there. But we talk about our physical clutter, the stuff that we see. We've addressed that a bit in this conversation. Then we talk about emotional clutter, which is what I call that guilt and fear that, either someone bought this for me, my kid made this for me, it cost a lot of money, so I can't get rid of it. All of those, little voices that we tell ourselves. And then we have what I call calendar clutter, which is that being overscheduled, overcommitting, not being able to say no, taking on too many things. So I'm curious if each of you could speak into, as from your Enneagram type perspective, from your own personal experience, how do we talked about the physical, but really the emotional and calendar clutter, and what does that look like in your world? Who wants to go first?
All right, I can answer this very easily for me.
I know, and I know what you're going to say, but they don't. So go ahead.
Oh, you do? All right,
I think I do. I'll tell you if I was off, if I was wrong or not.
So like we have already established, physical clutter is not an issue for me. I get rid of things, I purge, I go through more periods of accumulation and then decide, okay, I'm ready to upgrade. I'm good about that. And when things do get crazy in my life, by the way, I wanted to go back and say I'm not one of those perfect angle, straight edge line people either. That's not how I run my household. I like to have basic places for everything, and so that the reset is very easy for me. It's just is never too far.
You don't get threes don't get micro. 3s are not micro people. They're because that goes back to that whole detail thing. Yeah. It's like, here's the space for that. And I think that's an important distinction because certain 100%. Types on the Enneagram get micro, and that micro can stand in the way of progress because they make the system so complicated that nobody else can follow it. And so 3s don't do that. So I just want to kind of point that out.
That right there really gets to why I was not the right person to ever teach other people how to organize, because I don't have the patience for people who are like, but what about when you want to have all the underwear folded and color coded? I'm like, nope, I was throwing it all in a drawer and we were done with that 20 minutes ago. That right there is exactly why my personality type, I don't slow down for other ways of doing things, because to me, it's just so inefficient. And again, that's not a judgment, but that's just how I'm like, I don't have time for all that. All right. So I also do not struggle with calendar clutter. I don't have a hard time saying no. I like to have big periods of uninterrupted time to think and process and do things. And the other reason why I know that my problem is not calendar clutter is because of this. Emotional clutter is definitely my thing, because I was the amount of things that I got done 5 years ago, like around the time that I was starting Pro Organizer Studio, it was side hustle on top of a side hustle on top of a corporate job, on top of being, I was a single mom, 2 little kids. I got more done at that time because when my children were with their father, I could turn off my mom brain, and I wouldn't call that emotional clutter, but I would just call it emotional priorities. If I could turn off my mom brain, I could get a ton of stuff done. But now, or over the years, there have been different periods of time where I had, less work, more kids, more, how my time with them works out has changed over the years and changed and evolved as they've gotten older. And when they're with me, it's like, I can't, it's like productivity, quote unquote, kind of goes out the door a little bit because my, and I don't fault myself for this, but it's just like, it's like biological, almost like I'm always scanning for like what they need, where they are, what they should be doing, what they should not be doing. Things that, and so to me, any type of, world events, bad news, freaking COVID for however many years we're going to be going through this, anything that happens that really takes my emotional attention away, I have to deal with all of that before I can do anything else. And so in terms of clutter and stuff that piles up and keeps me from functioning as well as possible, it is always going to come from something that just I'm emotionally wrapped up in. And my kids are just the easiest example of like, hey, this is my priority at this stage of my life. And I'm like, not going to change that. But I just recognize like, okay, when they're with their dad for the summer, that'll be the time that I can actually like, boom, 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 start to get things done again, because then I am able to turn that part of my brain off and focus on other things. This is a big reason why Melissa coming into the business at the time she did, was because of how, the division of my time with my children was changing. And that's been great, but because I really had to take that step back and say, I'm still the big picture, advisor, but she is capable and able to lead with those daily details. And of course she still has her daughters at home too, but maybe because of like different stage of life, but also really a different way of approaching things, probably with that too brain, is that it doesn't bother her so much, or I don't know. I don't even know how she would maybe describe that. And maybe that's a little bit too personal, but for whatever reason, that's why she was the perfect person to come on to help with everything.
That is so, and first of all, for the record, I did not think that was you're going to be your answer. So I'm glad. I was pleasantly surprised. That was, good. Yeah, I did not think that, but I was pleasantly surprised. And I like how you make the distinction that that's a priority. Like as a mom, as a parent, like I will never fault anybody, myself included. Like we all prioritize, hopefully we are prioritizing our families over whatever else is going on. Okay. Does that mean, especially in the big picture sense, like, were there times where I said, I'm sorry, I can't come to your game because I have an appointment with the client? Sure. But like in the big scheme of things, and that's the beauty of this business for anybody that we have as our fellow organizers, or maybe somebody that's thinking about starting this business, is you can design it to an extent to work around your family obligations. And that's one of the things that I love about this. And to be able to make the distinction of your priorities were where they were in that season of your life. And that wasn't that necessarily clutter, because to me, clutter is about the stuff that is taking up space, either physically, emotionally, or whatever, that is not serving you, that you're not using, that is like everything that you had going on was important. It was just a matter of, I have to delegate. I have to learn to delegate. And I will say, I think threes can be good delegators because they know that there's things that I don't want to be bothered with, like, but they need to get done. Like, it needs to get done, but I'm not the person. And so in your case, you made the conscious decision to delegate that to Melissa. And I think for people that, whether this is you're at home and saying, I am going to delegate the meal, I'm going to do a meal prep service because I really don't want to have to cook and prep. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go grocery shopping. I find it tedious, or whatever it is. There are ways that you can still say, well, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to hire a gardener to help me weed because I come home and I see weeds everywhere and it stresses me out. And I don't want to spend my whole weekend weeding. So I think there are ways, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, that you can kind of take what Jen's saying and apply it to whatever scenario you makes sense in your world. Melissa, what about you?
Yeah. So I think on physical clutter, I might be a different like personality type, if that makes sense. Cause I'm very much the same, like, and maybe it's just
Ooh,
like,
now that's interesting.
yeah, no. And maybe it's because I got to it later in my life where I was like, well, I hate this and I want to be different. And so I like learned how to change my brain about that one particular thing. But I'm very much like, if I don't need it anymore, bye, maybe I need it 3 weeks from now, whatever it goes. Like physical clutter is not really my problem, but so a 2 has a lot of problems with emotional and calendar clutter because we are always trying to help other people. And so like, and I've tried to dial this down a little bit, but I am constantly over promising myself or my own time because, well, this person needs me, whether it is a friend, whether it is a family member, whether it is an organizing client, a pro organizer studio client. Like I am always saying like, I got it. I can do that for you. I can do that for you because I want to help them. And again, it is from the purest heart, right? It's not.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
But the problem comes with then I overpromise or I overschedule, and then I actually end up letting someone down. And so then I have a guilt of I didn't help that person. And so it's really the emotional clutter. So it's similar to what Jen is saying of like, I am helping other people with their emotional clutter, but I'm creating emotional clutter in my own life too, if that makes sense.
And the calendar clutter, I would imagine, and is because again, any potential free time that you had, and I use that term very loosely.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, you need a pie for this? Oh,
I
sure,
have
I'll
20
make one.
minutes. I can totally do it.
Yeah. I also think, and tell me if this real, because a lot of 2s that I've talked to, and I want to see if you can relate to this, Melissa. So 2s also, where I've seen 2s struggle with physical clutter is because they are that helper nurturer. They're the people that will have teenagers, but in their garage or their basement, they'll still have a high chair because somebody might come over my house with a high chair or like with a little kid and need a high chair. So I have it. Like I'm the one that has something for everybody.
And that's where I think I might be a different personality type because I do not do that.
Okay.
And so that's interesting to me that I can absolutely see that they could do maybe someday, like maybe someone with a baby is going to come over. So I have to keep these 22 things. Yes. I don't do that. But again, I think it's about how I came to organizing. So
I was going to say, I wonder where like that, because after we do something over and over again, and that could be you get in a really healthy eating pattern lifestyle or exercise lifestyle, all of these things just become, it spirals, right? It snowballs, and you could apply it to finances, health and wellness, whatever. And I think the same with organizing. The longer we do this as a profession, the more, as I get older, and it also could be the season of life, I am leaning more, not intentionally, but I'm more minimalistic. Like if I get rid of something, I'm like, I don't even need to replace it. Like it's fine but I feel like the longer you do it, the more that muscle gets developed. And so you feel easier it is to make those decisions.
I also think that you could make the argument that because I'm a 2 and because I like to help, I see how happy it makes people to get rid of all the crap they don't need. And so I feel like that endpoint of like, yes, but you will feel so good and you will be so happy when you don't have 17 high chairs just in case. So I think you could make the argument that like I manifest it just a little bit differently about physical clutter, but emotional and calendar clutter. And I would actually put like a subcategory under calendar clutter of like digital clutter.
Yeah. Well, that's digital clutter.
Struggle with all of that.
What? Yes, Miss Kilbourne. What were you going to say? I saw.
Well, when I heard digital clutter was an option, I was like, oh God, that's the one. Okay. I've got that. Because that's where I'm keeping all of my, possible ideas that I might want that one day. I'm totally do that. And pictures, stuff that you just are like, it's not going anywhere. It'll still be there, but I would feel so
they're the
like
silent killer. I think digital clutter is a silent killer because you don't see it, right? It doesn't take up space the way, you're not having the physical files. It's not like you have notebook after notebook after notebook, but you have all of these, although I will say I went into my Google Drive the other day because I was looking for like a something from a while ago, and I had like, the 50,000 revisions from the 100 years I've had this business. I was like, I need to spend a weekend and just purge that. Cause if it was physical files, I would have cleaned it out and been like, oh, that's an old file, I don't need it. But I no joke had like a sample, like one sheet about my business from 2015, like for why, like that's,
I wanted to,
yeah,
can I reply to something that Melissa said?
absolutely.
Well, actually, I was I was posting all on my Instagram, so I was multitasking a little bit. But when I heard her say something, and Laurie, you sort of chimed in too about volunteering. And I gave up volunteering a really long time ago. And I will tell you, I'm not sure if this is something specific to me personally, or if this is a 3 thing. So maybe Laurie can tell me. I am okay with the other parents at school thinking that I don't volunteer for stuff.
That's a 3. I think that's a 3
does not bother me. Now, what I will do, and they won't ever know about it, is I'll contribute, I'll send money, but I'm like, I can't, and I don't need like recognition for that or something, but I'm just like, I don't care if they're like, wow, like Ethan's mom never signs up to get chaperoned on a field trip or whatever. But I'm like, if my kid didn't ask me to do it, it is absolutely not a priority. If my child asked me to do something, I mean, I am like driving all over creation, making it happen for them. But again, I don't have that need to be of service in that way where I'm like, oh, well, everybody else signed up to do something. I'm just like, hey, I'm going to contribute where I can, unless it was like mandatory. If it was mandatory, I'll do it. But like, I think I do have a very different relationship with like volunteering, and how I do sort of protect my time in that way, where I'm just like, it's okay with me if they think I'm not doing what everybody else is doing, because maybe they want to.
And then the exact example that you just gave, I can tell you, last night I spent 2 hours at my kid's school at a volunteer meeting that I'm extremely resentful of. And I'm resentful of the work I have to do for it, because I said yes, because I'm a helper. And this is a great example, because it was 12 hours ago. So,
and it's true. And that is really a couple things that I just want to highlight. 2s have to be mindful, and this is not you, I'm not picking on you, but I'm saying this is
on me all you want.
But this is a pitfall of 2s in general, that you run the risk, because you are that helper and you can overcommit and then become resentful because of that, of becoming martyrs. That's where you can run the risk, because it's not intentional. You're not setting out to be like, look at me, look at how good I am. You're not looking at for, a pat on the back or, accolades. But then at the end of the day, you sit there and go, what did I do? Why? And here I am now doing this. So there does become this resentment martyr situation. And you can see this manifest. I've seen it happen over and over again. The 3 thing, absolutely. And we talk about service, and, obviously service is a big part of my life. We are all in a service business. As a human, as a community member, I teach my kids and I try to practice a life of service. I think that looks different for different people. And you can be behind the scenes putting money or making here, I'll provide all the juice boxes, but I don't have the time, versus somebody else that's going to be like, I'm going to show up and sew the costumes. Do you know what I mean? So there's different ways. Service looks different for different people. And I think understanding this is kind of who I am. And there are the people that are the type that want to be the homeroom mom, or that want to go and, paint the, whatever decorations for the play. And there's somebody else where I'm like, oh, you need this project run, I'll create the spreadsheet, I'll do all the, you need fundraising, I'll ask anybody for money, I don't care, you've got a cause that I believe in, just tell me what you need. So I think we can all look at how we can use our time to the best of our ability. And if we're not careful, it becomes counter, which is what you have to be mindful of in that situation, Melissa, of saying, yeah, now I'm resentful. So I think that's great. Curious, I'm looking at my notes because I feel like we've covered a lot, and obviously I can talk more, but what words of wisdom would you have for somebody out there that is maybe struggling, that has, whether they know the Enneagram really well and are like, yes, I know I'm a 2, or maybe somebody's just like listening for the first time, doesn't really know much about the Enneagram, but goes, gosh, that sounds a lot like me. Or I think this is, this could be my spouse. What advice do you have specifically when it comes to understanding clutter and how to balance that, in whether it's the physical, emotional, calendar clutter? So I'll let you kick it off, Melissa.
Yeah. So I actually was, I have done a little bit of work on the Enneagram, mostly because you were kind of the first person that introduced me to it.
Pushed you. I was like,
no, but I'm so grateful for it, legitimately grateful for it, for my clients and how it has helped me help people, but then also help me understand and be graceful and kind to myself. Because I think that one of the things that I have had to learn and had to teach myself in the last kind of couple years is that because of my personality type, because of the things that I tend toward doing, I also need to remind myself to help myself. And so I think the best advice that I could give someone is make sure that in helping other people, that you also remember I know it's overused, but put your oxygen mask on yourself. That's an analogy I think about a lot.
That's a really good analogy for 2s. It is, because they are so busy again serving, and then they be other people that they wind up becoming depleted.
And I have to remind myself, in order to be the best person to show up for all these people in my life that are important to me, whether it's my family, whether it is my clients, I have to be kind to myself and make sure that I am not creating problems for myself because I'm trying to do too many things, or I am trying to be overly helpful. So that is the best advice I could give someone.
I love it. Miss Jen.
Mm-hmm. This is such a good question. I'm probably gonna be thinking about this for a few days.
Okay.
I wish that, actually, Laurie, I think one of the questions that you mentioned was when we were first introduced to the Enneagram, and funny enough.
Oh yeah, I did. I forgot to ask you that. Yes.
That's okay. I like you have definitely, you sent me a book several years ago, The Road Back to You, and said, you got to read this. You need to dive into it. But the funny thing is I was actually introduced to it like when I was in high school. My mom had done this like one-day retreat or something with a church group, and she was like, do you want to come? She was like, you're like learning about, we're gonna do this 2-hour long quiz and test and talk about what the different types mean. So I was aware of what it was a while back, but I wasn't as interested in I got much more into like Myers-Briggs later on. And then I didn't really understand the Enneagram is not a personality. It's more of like the definition of like what you're motivated by. Mm-hmm. It would have been very helpful for me to understand the relationship between Enneagram and like your environment. Before I, had children, before I got married 2 times, that would have been great. So I want to, but I think that my big takeaway though, is that like, we all have areas of improvement, but for the ways in which I am functioning well, whether that's in business or parenting or home or whatever, I think it is because I am decently good at letting go of what I'm not great at. And maybe a little bit of that is because I have the confidence in what I can do well, that maybe is a little bit, I don't know if it's more natural to a 3 or not, or if it's just something that I've become more comfortable with over time. I have to think about that. Because I wouldn't say that, for example, going back to that, question of volunteering, I wouldn't say that I always felt so confident in, hey, I know what I've got on my plate and I know that that's just not going to be me. And so if the other parents think, well, why didn't she show up for this thing? I'll be like, come talk to me about my life and my schedule. I welcome you to do that. But I think if earlier in my life, I might've been much more like, well, everybody else is doing it. And if I don't participate, then that would be negative consequences for whatever.
Wait, I want to ask you a follow-up question. Would that be more of a FOMO, like I'm missing out on it? Or would it be like, I want to be a part of it? Or it would be like, God,
people thinking badly of me.
That's it.
That's
Yep.
what it is.
That's
so
yep.
so I think I know that as a 3 that I do care what people think.
Yep.
I mean, I think all types care what people think, to whatever extent, but as a 3 where you're like aware when you're in public. Oh,
Yeah.
Laurie's saying
I
she
said
does
ish.
not.
I said
Yeah.
ish. I don't want people to not like me, but that's not yeah. I have a whole theory on
Yeah.
that with it.
That's really funny. So I think that because I like finally recognize that it is not just because I'm some crazy perfectionist that I like to have my house and my life in a certain way. It's because these things I am having a sensory reaction to my environment.
Mhm.
That's why I don't care how important it is to my children or anybody else in my family to, for example, have a dog. You will never, ever, ever hear that Jen got a dog, because I'm like, that is not like, it's so much addition to my space in sound, smell, everything. It's like, no, we I have children. That's great. Like we're at a manageable level. And so I think, for anybody, when you say what is a good tip or what would be some advice, I think like just
Wisdom, even if it's not tip,
aware,
just more insight.
Becoming more aware of anything that is just like bugging you in your house. Like, what is this? Is this anxiety? Is it just an irritation? Is it something that could actually be solved with like $20 and 10 minutes? Like, is it really what I think that it is? Like, I'm very sensitive about sounds. Like, my kids know this. They're like, and my older daughter, especially, she'll tell my son, she's like, if you don't stop crunching that water bottle right now, mom is going to end you. I'm like, thank you for doing all that parenting for me. But they just, again, I'm not trying to I'm very much like a choose my battles kind of person, but I'm very aware of, hey, there are certain things that cause me stress and anxiety. And if it's a conversation that I can have to help relieve that, then maybe that's what it really is, versus like I don't get mad at myself because, I've let things pile up or whatever. So what I'm trying to get at is like, once you understand yourself, your type better, then you can let yourself off the hook for like, here's what I'm naturally just like never going to be great at. And that is okay. Like, I think.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of follow up on that, I always say a couple things about the Enneagram. I think one of the things, and this goes back to kind of what you said, you went to this, retreat with your mom or this workshop with your mom, which I think is super cool. And it's what you do with it, right? So you can look at any of these, anything, okay, whether it's the Enneagram or anything else, but we'll use the Enneagram specifically. And you could say, oh, I read a book, I listened to a podcast, I took a quiz, whatever it is. And it said that, an 8, and all of a sudden I feel seen and heard, and that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, if you really want to use the Enneagram as a tool for transformation, it is not the gospel, but as a tool. That's how I use it, as a tool in your toolbox for transformation, to say, I am struggling with this, or I have a communication barrier with this, or I feel that there's, why am I always feeling like I have to say yes? Or why do I always, why am I always striving for perfection? Or why do I always have to, whatever it is. And you can use this as a springboard to understand a little bit more about yourself. Then you can say, okay, this isn't an excuse for why I do it. Like, it's not like, okay, so I get off the hook for being aggressive because I'm an 8. Now I could say, oh, I feel seen and heard. That's great. But how can I be the better, healthier version of myself? And how can I work in the areas that I'm a little bit weaker in, or that I might struggle? Can I be better? And you can apply that relationally, and you can relay it in clutter, which is the stuff that I'm doing. So like all the work I'm doing is saying, okay, so let's take this. We know that, you are really good at A, B, and C. That's a strength when it comes to dealing with clutter and organization, but you also struggle with X, Y, and Z. So how can we kind of build up that muscle? And so I think all of these conversations about your life as an adult, as a child, your environment, the season of life that you're in, they're all really relevant, because it helps you to say, okay, here's where I am. This is what I know about myself. Instead of beating myself up for the areas that are not my strengths, you could say, well, I can either outsource, support, bring the people like the Melissas of the world into my world where I know I'm struggling. Or you could say, hey, I'm really good at this. So I'm going to take my gifts and I'm going to help others. I know I'm really organized. I know I have vision. I know I can, sit with somebody and work through their clutter. Maybe I should be a professional organizer. Maybe that's something I should consider doing and using my gifts. And I think that that's the whole purpose of me doing this whole series and all the work I'm doing is saying, how can I use this information and apply it to my life?
I love something that you said, which is recognizing who we are and what we are, but also not using it as an excuse all the time either. Because I think that's the biggest thing is I could easily say like, well, sorry, it's just who I am. But I can also say, I have recognized in myself this tendency. This is how I can maybe fight against it or turn that from something that is a downside into an upside. And no matter what personality type you have, Jen and I work with a lot of ones in our coaching business. So teaching a one that it doesn't have to be perfect. Like you can launch a business without it all being perfect. Or if a client is a one, you do not have to have the space being perfect, but again, not using it as an excuse, just using it as a springboard to know how to be different.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm not using this as a shameless plug, but I am going to say, part of the reason why I wanted to develop this Enneagram and clutter framework was also for other professional organizers to be able to use this so they can have a different perspective when working with their clients.
Absolutely.
So that to me, yes, I think self-discovery is the start to anything, right? Because you have to be healthy yourself before you can, work with other people. But in a profession, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a professional organizer, coach, whatever, when you know that you're going to be working with people that are sensitive to certain things, it's about, one of the things that I learned early on with like having a 4 daughter, and we'll be talking about the 4s in a couple of weeks, is, 4s tend to be very emotional and very past oriented and oftentimes can struggle with that sentimental piece of things. So a job, when I know that I'm working with somebody that's more of a doer, fast-paced 3, that'll probably get things done quicker. And I'm stereotyping here. It might take me an hour to do something with them. Well, it might take 2 with a 4. It might take 2 hours. And being able to set that expectation and just saying, okay, we want people to work through the process at their own pace is the mark of, a really good professional organizer, because you're trying to meet your clients where they are, and understanding yourself and understanding your clients that's how you develop lasting relationships.
Absolutely. And being able to understand, because I took the Enneagram and clutter course and it really helped me understand. I mean, I try to do this anyway, but understanding where someone else is coming from and just recognizing I do not understand. Like I've said before, my husband can make a CVS receipt sentimental. I don't get it. Right. But I can then.
What type is that, Laurie?
He's a 4. But understanding where those people are coming from so that then I can get into their brain and be like, how can I get them to change their view on this? It's an incredibly important skill for an organizer, or if you're just working in your own house, to figure out how to flip that switch.
Yeah. It's about reframing things so that it's going to resonate with where you are. Right? How is this going to resonate with your motivation, with what's going to get you to the finish line? So, you guys are awesome. Is there anything else before we tell everyone where to find you and listen? Like anything else that you guys want to share, parting words of wisdom with our people?
Oh, I mean, I could talk about this for 12 hours.
I know. So could I, but
it's really interesting. But I just think studying yourself and learning about yourself, learning your motivations, learning about this. It's one of the best things you can do for your entire life, no matter what business you're in, no matter what your house looks like figuring this stuff out. This is the work of how to get organized. It's not throwing stuff in a bag and taking it to a donation site. It is changing your brain and understanding your brain and how it interacts with your life. That's how you get organized, I think.
Jennifer.
That's so good.
That was it. Your
I'm
piece out.
happy. I'm very
Yeah.
happy. We
All
could
right.
talk about this for a lot longer. Thank you for
Yes,
having this
we could.
conversation, Laurie.
And well, thank you guys for being here. And we're going to come back. We're going to take one more quick break and put you guys in the final hot seat. Because I'm always curious to see these questions, and Melissa's never been on our show. So of course she gets to be asked, but tell our listeners, of course, we will link to everything in our show notes, but where can they learn more about each of you guys, the work you're doing at Pro Organizer Studio, the podcast, all the things?
Yeah. You can find Jen and myself at proorganizerstudio.com. You can check out our podcast on every podcast platform in the universe. It's Pro Organizer Studio Podcast. And then if you want to learn more about our Inspired Organizer program, you can go to inspiredorganizer.com.
Awesome.
Instagram, all the places. You can
All
find
the
us all the
places.
places.
They're everywhere. And again, we'll have links to everything in our show notes and on our webpage. So if you are out and about,
I have to say it is definitely becoming more clear to me over time how much, if I had known, it's like Inspired Organizer is a business program for professional organizers that was created by a 3.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, I know we've had people get so much out of it, like whether it's the beginning, middle, end, or somewhere along the way, no matter what personality type they are, but it's so funny. It's so clear now. I'm like, oh, the reason why I felt so strongly about these particular things, like that totally comes from the way I feel like, professional presentation, branding, all these things. I was like, let's talk about the big picture of how you are thinking about yourself and your business, and not just playing small, like branding yourself like you're a cleaning service. It's like, this is so much more than that. Like, I know that we are all very aware of that. Like, this is so much more than just cleaning up your desk. Like, it is making decisions and starting to work through the why are we here?
Mm-hmm.
And that really, like, that passion for me has never gone away, as far as helping organizers understand this is it's a mental health service. It's very, very needed. It is something that the more that you invest, not just like we were talking earlier, Melissa can now teach you how to organize other people. Laurie can teach you how to get into people's, the mindset, excuse me, I hit my microphone, the mindset of where they're coming from and what their motivations are, and how those relationships are playing out in their household. All of this is so complementary to each other, and Inspired Organizer is really about how to organize yourself, like the back end of you and your business. But I think all of these things are needed. And I just want to tell you guys, I appreciate it more and more and more over time, because we do all have very different types. It's great.
Yeah. And we all have gifts that we bring, and that's it. And I think that's it that's the important thing. And you could see, and if there are any I want to know if you guys have any 5 organizers in your group, because that's the one type. 4s and 5s. I'm curious to see. So if you're a 4 or 5 and you are a professional organizer out there, do a poll. I'd like to do a poll with your people and see.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's a lot of 1s. Know that there's a lot of 2s, 7s, big 7s, 9s even. So, but I'm curious. So we'll see. We'll have to check it out. But anyway, all right, we're going to go one more quick break, come back, wrap up questions, and then everyone can go on their merry way. So sit tight. All right, ladies, final questions. So again, we ask all of our guests, because you have inspired us, obviously, no pun intended. What book, and if you're not a book reader and you want to talk about a podcast, that's fine too. But what book have you read or currently reading, something that's been like really impactful, transformational in your life, that you're like when I said to Jen, you have to read this book to go back to you, what is a book that you have passed over to people over and over again? Melissa, I'll start with you.
I am a major book nerd.
You are? Good.
Oh yes, huge.
Same.
Yes, major. I could tell you exactly how many books I have read so far this year, if you want to. But I have read every type of book on earth, but the one that I keep coming back to and recommending over and over again, particularly for people who are professional organizers, but it's really good for people trying to organize their house as well. It's called Soundtracks.
Oh,
by
never heard
John
of that.
Acuff.
Oh, I love John Acuff.
Yes, this book is amazing. And first of all, he's really funny. He's really, it's not a stiff book, right? But it is all about the things that we have in our heads and how you can change those soundtracks. He just talks about like the things that you play in your head all the time, like I'm not good enough, or I'm not, whatever. Or I can never get organized, or I can never start my own business, whatever that is. He teaches you actual actionable tips on how to change and flip those soundtracks. It's amazing.
I'm buying it.
Audiobook,
You know,
too.
I love this. I love this question because I get so many great book recommendations from people.
Yep.
Literally if you look at my Amazon history, because we record on Thursdays, usually there's a book purchase on Thursday. Because
I cannot recommend it more highly, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing.
I love
Great
it.
book.
Awesome. All right, Jen.
Yes, the one that I have been recommending for the past year now is called Willpower Doesn't Work. And it's a little misleading, I feel like, the title, because it's not just about habits or change. It's not just about habit change. I know there's a lot of good books about habits right now, but and I promise I did not plan this just because this is really what this podcast was about, but it is so much, it's talking about how your environment is cueing you for so many of the behaviors that you're doing that you do not even realize, that it is much, much, much more important to wake up every day and work on changing your environment. Sometimes those are huge changes. Sometimes those are small things. It is much more important to work on your environment than to be like, okay, today's the day that I'm going to do my checklist and get the willpower to kind of push through it. And and like a great example of this is, you know, if you really want to accomplish a certain goal, join a group of people who are doing that same thing or have already done the same thing, because it is basically saying proximity is the fastest way to your results. Because you unconsciously or not are going to model the behavior and the expected identity of belonging to that group and working on those projects and moving towards those goals. Like if you want to accomplish something, you need to join a group of people who are already doing it. And I have been applying this in my life and for my children, you know, ever since I read it, which was probably New Year's 2021. I think it was kind of my first book of the year, and it really hit me on every level. So can't recommend that enough. It's very, very worth it.
And that's you bring up, it's, I can't wait. I'm going to buy both of them because it's funny.
Yes.
We talk about, and I think this is a really important clarification I just want to make with the stuff with the Enneagram. Motivation alone does not equal behavior change. Wanting to do something, wanting to lose weight, wanting to stop drinking, wanting to stop gossiping, wanting to do whatever it is not enough. You have to take that motivation with a strategy, whether that means, again, environmental change, surrounding yourself, whatever practices. And so the stuff, the connection of the dots that I talk about when I go really deep, not just on the podcast, but is about saying, okay, now we know this is where your motivation is. How do we tie that to actual action, like practical action that's going to be sustainable? Because you can't just motivation alone. That's not going to be enough. And I think so many people, and I've seen this, and I'm sure you've seen this with clients or people even in their businesses as entrepreneurs, is I want this. And you wanting it is great because you have to have the buy-in, right? You have to believe, you have to have that buy-in in whatever it is that you're doing. But you have to have the strategy and the action to accompany it. So I think that's great. Okay. Then our last two questions. And I love asking these questions to other people who are professional organizers, because even though we've said it, that none of us are perfect and we don't have everything at the right angles, there's this perception in the masses that your house is perfect and your life is perfect and everything's perfect. Where in this particular season of your life do you feel like you're the most organized? It could be personally or professionally. And where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess?
That's a great question. I feel really good. So my house is never going to be perfect, but the thing that I love about being organized and that I tell people a lot is it takes me no time at all to get it back in order. Okay. So that's the base. So when it is a mess, I can get it back in order in very quick time. So I feel really good about my physical surroundings in my house. I definitely feel out of control I'm a hot mess on the calendar and on the getting the actual physical work done, because there's always a lot, right? There's always just a lot to take care of. So I'm working actively on trying to get my to-do list. My to-do list is a hot mess, is where I'm going with
You
that.
want to know what I started doing? This is my new thing that I've recently just started doing it, and I'm testing it out for a while to see if it works before I like officially put it out there. So I created a top 3 list.
Love that.
Right. So I broke it down here. This one's all written on. I'm going to show it to you. Right. I literally made it on like a Google sheet. Okay. So it's my top 3. And if I like it, if it works for me, I'm going to like just create it as a free download and put it on the website.
I love that.
So it's a top 3. And I broke it down by calls, emails, and projects.
This is what mine looks like.
Yeah. See, that stresses me out. That's just because I can't.
Me out too.
Right. So I put down every day, and this was yesterday's, I just didn't throw it away. So it was, what are the top 3 phone calls I need to make? What are the top 3 emails I need to do? What are the top 3 projects that I'm working on? You know, where it could be. And then there's just like a free notes area. So every morning I come in, I print it out, because if you want to print it out, or you could do it digitally, but I've been trying to practice it, printing it out, and I'll look at what I have on my plate and go, what am I prioritizing?
Love it.
Okay. I'll send it to you.
Please do. Thank you.
Jen, you're up.
Okay, this is probably going to be a really boring answer, but it's really true. I will say right now in my life, I am most organized and on top of just like my self-care, daily routines, health, stuff like that. So, you know, like I said, keeping up with life right now, being a volleyball mom, driving all over. And the area that I have always struggled the most with is, and now I say struggle. It's not that I can't do it, but what I let pile up the longest is paper clutter. And I absolutely can't stand getting a piece of mail that then I have to make a phone call about. And so I will put that off until kingdom come. I just can't, I don't like getting on the phone, because then I know I'm going to be on hold, and I've low patience for that kind of thing. So that's kind of always my thing, that I'm like, oh, today's the day that I'm going to sit here and just happily, you know, knock all this stuff out. And that does not happen. I need somebody to come over. And in fact, I hope that anybody who made it this far in this episode, jump over to Pro Organizer Studio podcast, because Melissa and I do talk about this stuff. Like our episodes together, we are very clear, I think, and very vulnerable about like, hey, here's the stuff that we have struggled with, especially in the last few years. But I hired a professional organizer myself. And that was like the biggest vulnerability that I have ever put out there, because I'm like, I know this girl knows who I am. And I was like, I'm swearing you to secrecy, but I have this like, you know, Monica closet, you know, Monica from Friends.
Yes.
And it was all, I was like, it's papers and it's stuff that I have let pile up so long that I feel physically ill trying to open that door and look at it, because I know that it's not that I can't make decisions on 90% of it, but somewhere in there is this like lurking, like I scribbled down a note that I was going to get back to somebody and I haven't. That for me is like the 3's like worst nightmare, is like, I made a promise to you and I'm not keeping it.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, the fact that I could get her just to come over and help me go.
Did you make her sign like
papers.
an NDA? So when she came over.
Hell no. I posted her on Pro Organizer Studio Instagram, and I was like, check out what I did, because I was like, look, everybody needs help.
There's no shame in that game. There's no shame in that game.
I promoted the heck out of her, but it was because I felt so great about it, obviously, after the fact. But that was actually a really funny moment, because I'm like, well, first of all, I'm totally willing to spend the money on this, because I more than anyone should know how much this is going to help me and move forward. And then now I'm going to have like my office closet is going to be perfectly organized. Like, why wouldn't I want her to do that? And it was great, because I got to experience from the client side where she's like, you need to just like go sit in the chair. I'm going to pull everything out. And then you can just sit there, and I'm just going to present things to you, and we're going to talk about it. And I was like, yes, finally I can be the one who's just like, I don't know, help me, mom. Yeah, it was great. It was fab. I would highly recommend that to everybody. You should experience it from the client side.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Melissa and Jen, I love you guys. I am so appreciative that you're in my life, that we're in this space together. And thank you for coming on and opening up about your lives and your Enneagram-ness. It really means a lot. And I can't wait to do some fun collab stuff. Now that the world is reopening again,
Yes.
Totally.
do something. So stay
Sign
tuned.
me up. I'll do it.
All right.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you.
And if this is your first time tuning into our show, welcome. Make sure you click the subscribe, follow button wherever you are listening or watching. Again, we're on YouTube. We're all over social media. If there's an episode topic that you want to hear about, feel free to reach out to us, shoot us an email or DM. We always want to hear from you. Until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love by sharing it with your friends. And if this is your first time tuning in, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so that you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth a listen. Head on over to YouTube and make sure that you follow us there as well. We record interviews, videos, and conversations with all of our guests. And again, if you want to learn more about our product offerings, feel free to visit us at simplybeorganized.com where you can connect with me.